In today's video, I want to talk about lumosity masking or luminance masking or luminosity masking. There's a lot of different ways people describe it or talk about it, but it is basically just a way to select the certain brightness of an image and brush or feather in certain pieces of another image that may be overexposed or underexposed so that you can create a more dynamic composition. It is used pretty extensively in very high-end editing and stuff like architecture editing. And so in this video, I'm going to kind of define what it is, go over how I use it and how I have found a lot of use cases for it, the panel that I use, and kind of leave you guys up to your own devices on if you want to use it or if you guys can use it in your day-to-day workflow. So what is a luminosity mask or a luminance mask? It's basically just a way to select a brightness, a midtone, or a darkness in an image. You'll hear me refer to them as brights, darks, and midtones instead of highlights, midtones, and shadows because a lot of the panels use that kind of terminology. But a luminance mask at its base is just a way to select a certain brightness or darkness in an image that you can then turn into a mask so that you can brush in some shadows, maybe you can brush in some highlights, you can use it to do selective color blending, you can use it to bring a sky in. There's a lot of different use cases for it, but at its core, it is just a way to select a certain brightness in an image. Now, a good rule of thumb for luminance masking is that they should be used for that last 5 to 10% of polish. I personally don't like to use them to do a ton of heavy lifting because I think that it can get really complicated very quickly and it can end up producing an ugly image that can look almost like the old HDRs of the early 2000s where it's really pushed and tone mapped. You don't have a whole lot of contrast in it and you can get yourself in a hole pretty quickly. So I like to use them for that kind of last little bit of polish. Maybe there is just something that's slightly too bright, or in a twilight images we're going to see, maybe it's a way to bring in some of the windows so that they're not super blown out and we can paint in some of those shadows and really direct a viewer's attention in our photograph, as opposed to just trying to find a one-click solution for it, or just blending it in with just a paintbrush on a black or white mask without that refinement. For the purposes of this video, we are going to be using Raya Pro 6. I have been a subscriber to the Raya Pro panel for a long time. You do not have to be. It works very similar to a lot of other panels. The user interface might be slightly different, but all of the panels such as TK panel, Easy panel, which I believe is either a free version of Raya Pro's panel or one of TK's free plugins, or if you use Pro Panel, that's another one that I've seen some people use. They all work relatively the same, so they should translate fairly well. But for the purposes of this, we will be using Raya Pro 6. Okay, so we are here in Lightroom, and we are going to go ahead and load up our photos. Wanted to make sure Photoshop is open there to make this a streamlined process. This is a twilight photo that I recently did. It is winter here, so it is unfortunately not the greatest, but it is what we are going to work with, so we have something fresh for you guys to check out. So what we will do first is I'm just going to apply my neutral exterior to this guy. We might come in here and adjust. It's a little green. Looks like to me slightly. 8 there. What do we think here? I think a little warmer doesn't look too bad. Let's go with something like that. So we will do that, and then the first thing you need to do is select your base image, or the image that you're going to build off of with these luminance masks. Typically, I like to find something that is got my subject pretty much where I want it to be. This is a twilight image, so we'll go a little bit darker, but we are going to be able to brush in from a brighter exposure some of these darker areas, and we will also be able to pull down some of these highlights as well. Let's push it just a hair higher, maybe like that. Then we will come in here and we are going to select our other two images. I'm going to just sync this across, and I'm going to take off that exposure just so we don't have to deal with it going crazy. And let's see here, good base image. This one is all right for a little bit darker. If we wanted to pull down any of these bright lights or something feels a little bit too hot, this is going to be a good image for that. We can even kind of pull it like that, where it's not going too crazy. I do like that one. And then I think this one here might be our good over. Yeah, it's nice. I'll push it up just a little bit. You can see we can get a lot of little detail in here, and those should be good. So as usual, Alt-P-E up. Enter is going to open all of these as layers. You can use them as smart object layers if you would like, but for the purposes of this video, we are going to use them as regular old layers because it'll be a little bit faster for us. Now it is important to note that these are on a tripod, so they are already going to be aligned. I will not have to do anything with them. I'm going to resize this because it's for my larger monitor resolution, and we are here. So the first thing first, we have, if you have Raya Pro, you can come up here, Raya Pro 6, and we have all of these in here. I do have the TK Luminance panel, but we are going to be using Raya Pro, as we said earlier. And then you can open up the hub. I like to work in Instant Mask, which is this guy right over here. And now when we look at this, we have our breakdown of what I was talking about in the intro. We have our B for our brights, 6 different variations, our darks, 6 different variations, and our midtones. There is a bunch of different things in here that you can use. You can go in and do a little manual adjustment on some of them. You can select saturation, you can refine the edges, you can use all of these, this shadow, midtones, and highlights to refine your masks. Play with them as at your will. One thing that I like to do in all of my things with editing and with luminance masking and anything that I do in Photoshop is only do what is necessary. Don't go overboard with it. Keep it really simple. Odds are that is going to be your best bet. One nice feature of this is that you could align them if you wanted to with this align button. It does have a lot of very nice things you can do really quickly in this panel, which is one reason I do like it. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take my base image, put it at the bottom, and I'm going to turn these two off. And first, I'm just going to look at this image and say, what do I think I really need to do right now? And for me, I think we need to get these shadows brought in. So I'm going to bring that bright image, make sure it is in my second slot. It does not matter. It's up to you where it goes, just needs to be on top of that base image. You can relabel these if you would like. I'm going to keep them the way they are because I like to look at the thumbnails and reference them that way. So what we're going to do with both of those layers turned off, we are going to come into the Instant Mask panel, and we said we want to work on the shadows. Now I will show you what each of these numbers do. This is going to give us the widest selection. So anything that is in white is going to be fully selected and shown through. Anything that is in black is going to be hidden. So you'll notice that our darker areas are very light and our bright areas are very dark. Now for me, I would go and say, let's try 2. This will refine it down. It's going to make it a more constrained mask. You can see that it made the brights a little bit brighter, it made the darks a little bit darker, and it took those grays and it pulled them out. So you're going to get a more restricted or confined mask the farther you go down. If we click on 6, it's going to be such a constrained one. I don't think we're going to use it. I personally like to go with a mask that is a little bit more wide of a range than one that is more constrained. So I tend to stay around 1 through 3. We are going to go with 1 first. And then you'll notice there is this blur button here. This blur button will come in and it will blur it a small amount so that you don't get a ton of hard lines. Now in this scenario, I am going to leave it as is and not blur it, but just know that that is there. So now we have our mask over here in a folder called Instant Mask. I'm going to drag it and I'm going to drop it on top of this brights image, and we're going to turn it on. And it looks really flat and it kind of looks really shitty. And it's supposed to. That's okay. What we're going to do now, the little bit of magic that I have learned, is that we can now take this masked layer, hold Shift, click the folder to put it into a group. With that group now selected, hold Alt and click the mask button. And now we can put a mask on top of that already masked image, which gives us even more control. So we are now going to be revealing a refined mask. So we will hit B for brush. I usually like to set my opacity anywhere from 15 to 5% with 100% flow. This is what works for me. You can play with it and see what works best for you. Let's start with 10. Make sure we have a white, so we are revealing that mask, and we are just going to kind of paint with reckless abandon around some of those darker areas, and you'll see that they come in. And even if we were to kind of paint in some of the bright areas, you'll notice it's not really bringing it in, and that is because of that mask that is below down here, keeping those things hidden. So we can kind of be pretty loose with it. Man, it's not a lot. We don't want to make this image too flat. I think I do want to paint a little bit here, kind of make sure that glow looks like it's coming off the house. And anywhere else you think that it might be needed. Just like that. And there we go. And now if we turn it on and off, you can see there's what the difference did. And it gives a nice subtle enhancement to those darker areas. Now, what I like to do next, you can go ahead and hit the instant mask button and now make your selection for brights if you want to. Personally, for me, I like to click on this last layer. Go ahead and get rid of that folder, but click on this layer that we just did, the group, hold Alt-Control-Shift-E, and that will stamp all that is visible and give you this layer that has all of that. And the reason why is I have found sometimes that these masking plugins tend to get a little confused if you have a wrong layer selected, or if you accidentally still have the mask selected, and this just gets rid of that. It's a temporary layer that we will get rid of in a moment. So we'll go back to our instant mask and we're going to click Brights 1 and see how it looks. Now this feels a little bit too wide of a range for this mask. See how a lot of this is gray? We would be kind of affecting a lot of that. And for this one, I'm going to just paint in a little bit in this here, and we might touch up some of the windows just to bring them down just a little bit. Nothing crazy, just a little bit. Also, maybe pull this down over here because this is really bright, and we don't really want them looking at the neighbor's house. So we are going to go to Brights 2. Now, Brights 2 is a much more refined mask, and that looks really, really good to me. But I think what we are going to do is I'm going to play with some of these sliders to show you what they do. This is the midtones, and that's selecting, giving us a little bit more of the midtones for us to work with. If we pull on the shadows, it's going to compress those blacks. So we don't want to do that. Let's try and bring maybe our highlights down just to, oopsie daisy, just a tad. Let's not do that. Let's see, it darkens it a little bit too much. Something like right in there. So I'm going to take this guy and we are going to drag him on our darker exposure. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this instant mask folder and that temporary stamped layer that we had. We're going to turn it on and it's going to look terrible again. But we're going to hold Shift, click our folder to make a new group, hold Alt and click our mask, and it's going to take it out. Now we are going to take this brush and I'm going to take it down to 5% this time. So it's even less than last time. And we're just going to pick some areas where we think it's a little hot. Right there's a little bit, maybe this light here just to bring it down a little bit in that window. There's another really bright light right there. And then let's go over here and let's kind of turn this down a bit. And for this, I'm going to go up to 15 to help bring it in quite a bit more. You'll notice I may have gone a little bit too far there. See how it's getting really, really flat looking? Just go ahead and hit X. We'll change that back to black. A couple clicks, and there it's back. Let's hit X and change it back to white. I'm going to paint a little bit of this sky in here. Same thing up here. It's getting a little bit bright for my taste. It's a little bit here, and notice how it's not really affecting that shadow. We're getting a really good refined mask around a lot of these trees. Now, one thing to be cautious of when you are doing this is that if you have moving things, moving brush, these like moving weeds, maybe this tree was a little bit blurry because of it, you are going to run into the issue that you will if you were using the select and mask tool, and that is motion does not translate well when you're trying to brush things in and out. And the best case scenario for that is you're just going to have to make a decision to either have that area be a little bit brighter or a little bit darker. Or if you're okay with having it being a little bit opaque, you can also do that. Now we're going to sit here and click this on and off, and you can see there's the biggest difference. This darkens up this nice area over here, so it's not the biggest focal point. Over here we've got the sky brought in, and up here it looks really nice. I still think I might do just a couple clicks right there, a couple clicks there, just to hone it in just a little bit. Now that that's done, I'm going to hit F4 that I have bound to flatten image, and it will flatten it for us. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you, kind of a nice little trick, is if you get something and you're like, well, it looks great, but it's a little bit flat. It needs some contrast. This is another powerful thing that we can do with our masks. I can come in here and I can say, well, I don't want to make the highlights too contrasty. I don't want to go crazy with it. I'm going to select my midtones. So this is going to select my midtones and give me a nice mask over everything that is a midtone. Then, with that layer selected in the Instant Mask panel, we will click Curves. That is going to make that instant mask apply to a curves layer. We can double click it, come in here, and we can change this to, say, a linear contrast or a medium contrast. And that now is only applying contrast to our midtones and bringing it in nice and gentle. And if it's a little bit too much, you also have this opacity slider. And you can take that opacity slider and you can turn it up or down as much as you need until you get it looking just the way that you want. And it's these delicate little brush strokes that really bring it in and really help you make an image that feels more refined and feels better. So I hope that that helps you. I hope that it kind of clues you in a little bit more to how you can use luminance masks. I plan to do some more as I find some like good candidates for this. We'll do some interiors with it and stuff because it is a very effective way to help blend interiors that may be a little bit too HDR looking, or it may be a little bit too pushed, anything like that. But it is important to remember that there is not a one-click solution. I talked about this in another video at the beginning of this year, where if you are looking for a one-click solution, they unfortunately just don't exist. And the day that one does come out and AI solves this problem for us, everybody will go to using it and it will be everywhere. But at this point, there is not a one-click solution where you can just drag and drop your photos and not have someone, whether that is overseas, whether that is in your office or yourself, have to put in the painstaking work to edit these files and these photos. I hope that was helpful. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.